name is Matt Holland, and I'm a registered dietitian with the Ocean County Health Department. I've been there almost 19 years. Most of it was with the WIC department, Women, Infant, and Children. And then I came over to do the diabetes program about 3 years ago. So just really quick, at the health department, we offer 2 programs. One is for diabetics. It's a 4-week course, about an hour and a half each class, and we go over A through Z of diabetes. Nutrition, of course, medication, and the good thing about being in public health is we're mobile. So we could come out here and do the classes. We normally do them at the health department, but we do them all over the county because we're in public health, so we're mobile and we're flexible. And then the other program we do is the diabetes prevention program, which it's a big commitment. It's a 1-year-long program, and we meet once a week for 16 weeks and then once a month for 6 months. And that's for anyone who's a pre-diabetic or at risk for prediabetes. Okay? All right, so we'll get started. So today we're going to talk about diabetes and cardiac. So just a couple things to hopefully achieve tonight. We're going to talk about what is diabetes, what are the ABCs managing diabetes, okay, how to manage diabetes with the 7 self-care behaviors. We used to focus on 3 things: nutrition, exercise, and medication. And now we use these 7 self-care behaviors, and we'll talk about them briefly towards the end. And what are the different types of fats? So healthy fats for the heart. Okay, so if I said, what is diabetes? What do you guys think? What does that mean, or what is diabetes?
Kiss of death.
Kiss of death? It affects every organ, every system.
The pancreas isn't producing the insulin that your body needs.
Right, yep, the pancreas isn't producing insulin or the right amount. So what happens is our blood sugars go high, and that could affect everything. Like you said, the kiss of death. When our blood sugars are high and they're not managed, it affects our brain, our feet, our kidneys, our eyes. So it affects everything. So it's when our blood glucose or sugar is too high. And sometimes people will say that they have a touch of sugar, or I was a diabetic, I'm no longer a diabetic. But it's very clear, and we're going to go over the A1C numbers. Once you hit a certain range, you're a diabetic. Even if you come well below that, you're just managing it well, having a good, healthy lifestyle. But once a diabetic, then you're a diabetic. Because we'll have participants come to our class and they'll say, oh, my A1C was 8, and we're going to talk about the A1C. But my doctor said, no medication, and just say they got it below that 6.5 range, and they're saying I'm no longer a diabetic, but they are. But somebody could be managing it very well. Okay, so just to talk about the types of diabetes. So what about type 1? What does that mean, or you guys know what type 1 diabetes is? Yep. Yep, you could be, or you could be later. You could be. Yeah, absolutely.
Not producing.
Correct. So this is our pancreas, and all these fluffy things here, these represent our beta cells, or our cells on the pancreas. And these cells, they are the only ones in our whole body that produce insulin. So if they're not there, you can't produce insulin, and you'd be a type 1 diabetic. So type 1 diabetics, that's what their pancreas would look like. So in other words, they need to get insulin from an outside source. Now they have pumps, they have pens. Some people still take needles, but you have to get it from the outside. And then there's type 2 diabetes. How about, anyone ever hear of 1.5? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then gestational diabetes, developing diabetes during pregnancy. Okay. So in type 1 diabetes, the exact cause is unknown, but we know certain things. Now, my boss she's a type 1 diabetic for 50 years. And when she was 10 years old, there was 3 girls in the class that got a virus. And right after that, they all developed type 1 diabetes. And so that was due to the virus. And with the uptake in COVID, we are seeing more children with type 1 diabetes. Yeah. So, and what happens if you could see that? So the body attacks itself. So your immune system attacks the pancreas, and then it kills off those cells. So that's one of the reasons. And only about, for the diabetics, 5 to 10% of all diabetics, and there's about 40 million in the US, are type 1. So only 5 to 10% are type 1 diabetics. And then some of the risk factors are exposure to a virus, okay? So sometimes the doctor will test for these antibodies, and if you test for 2 out of 3 of them, they'll diagnose you with type 1 diabetes. So they're testing for these antibodies, and those antibodies attack the pancreas. And then a family history. If you have a mom, a dad, brother, or sister, you're more prone to develop more prone to develop diabetes. Celiac, thyroid, Addison's. So these are all risk factors. And we were even at a talk, and the doctor was saying trauma, like childhood trauma, they're linking type 1 diabetes. I thought that was very interesting. I didn't know that. So they're talking about trauma. And some of the symptoms are weight loss. You're not absorbing anything. Excessive urination, because you get all the sugar's in the kidneys, and then there's a threshold, and then the kidneys say, let's excrete it out. So people tend to be urinating a lot, excessive thirst to help them urinate. And then unfortunately, coma or death can result. And about 90% of the children end up in the emergency room with, I don't know if you guys ever heard of DKA or diabetic ketoacidosis, just when the blood sugars go extremely high. And a lot of times they don't know the child is a diabetic until they get to the hospital and diagnose. And that's, yes, Ann?
Can you get type 1 as you age?
Yes. Yep. Sometimes we'll talk a little bit about that. And that's a good question, because a lot of times we'll have like type 2 diabetics, and they'll be like, oh, I don't want to take insulin. I don't want to do this. And maybe you don't have to take it for the rest of your life, but taking that insulin will help preserve these cells on the pancreas and prolong the pancreas. So it may be necessary. But yes, you could, if they stop producing or they're killed off, absolutely, you could go into being a type 1 diabetic. And then type 2 diabetes, this is our pancreas. I'm not ill, my pancreas is just lazy, just hanging out, taking it easy. And this is the most common type of diabetes. About 90 to 95% of diabetics are type 2. And we know they have a reduced insulin production, okay, because of those cells. Less cells means less insulin production. Insulin resistance. So I'm going to try and do this. So this represents one of the 30 trillion cells in our body. So after we eat and we break down carbohydrates into glucose, the simplest form, what happens is the pancreas then releases insulin, and the insulin attaches to one of our cells or all of our cells and opens it up. And then the glucose goes into the cell to be utilized for energy, because the cells always want to eat. They want to eat sugar. So what happens in type 2, you could have less insulin production, or there could be a lot of fat around this cell, and the insulin can't get to it. I like sports, so I said it'd be like an offensive line blocking for a quarterback. It just can't get there. And then sometimes, if you guys ever put the wrong key in a lock and it goes in, but you can't open it, that's like it. Sometimes it'll get to that cell receptor and it won't open it. So what do you think happens if the glucose doesn't go into the cell? Yeah, it goes high, right? It'll continue to go high. And then what happens, the body gets tricked. The liver starts to secrete more sugar into the bloodstream. So what you ate, your blood sugars are high, the cells aren't getting the sugar or glucose, and then the liver will kick out more. So our blood sugars continue to run high. And then over time, it could be an eventual loss of insulin. And then this slide just represents again what I said about this. You have the cell, the insulin attaches, opens up the cell, and the sugar goes in. And when that doesn't happen, the sugar can't get into the cell, and it'll get backed up and get very high. And then some risk factors for type 2 diabetes are prediabetes, so overweight, so the fat around the cell, the insulin can't get to it. 35 years or older. So we know that one in three, almost 100 million people have prediabetes. So they changed the age, the Diabetes Association. When you get your A1C tested, it was like getting it done at 45. But now there's so many people with prediabetes or even diabetes, they're recommending getting your hemoglobin A1C at age 35. And my son is 12, and some of his friends got tested for already. They're testing A1C, and the one kid, he does have prediabetes at the age of 12, so that's a little scary. But so I am happy that they changed the age, they lowered it down, because we know sometimes it takes 10 years or 7 years before you're diagnosed, and if you have diabetes without intervention, we know those complications over time, and it affects everything. So the worse off we are as far as neuropathy, kidney health, eye health. So we want to catch it early. Yep, having genes, genetics, and physically active less than 3 times a week. So what we try and shoot for as far as physical activity in our diabetes prevention class, we shoot for 150 minutes of moderate activity per week. So that comes out to be about 30 minutes, 5 days a week. And you don't have to do it consistently. You could do 3 10-minute exercise bouts for 5 days. So it doesn't have to be all at once. Yes, ma'am?
For the pre-diabetes,
yes.
How long can you have pre-diabetes before it becomes diabetes?
Good question. It all depends. But you could have it for quite some time, for quite some years, yeah.
The A1C, does it fluctuate? I mean, does it tell you that that's now diabetes? Like
yeah, the A1C will tell you. So,
what is that level?
Yep, we're gonna get, yep, good question, no. Nice slide. Yep, very good. So, yep, anyone else have any questions? You okay? All right. And then developing diabetes during pregnancy. And we know that women who were gestational diabetics, about 50% of them will develop type 2 diabetes. And they are testing. They usually test around 28 weeks, so the OBs are testing earlier now because they want to keep their blood sugars, they want them real tight. They keep them really tight for the health of the baby. A lot of times the babies are born with a distended abdomen, over 9 pounds, and a lot of times we'll have to get a C-section just for the health of the mother and the baby because the belly is distended. And then African American, Hispanic, Latino, American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian Americans are also at higher risk. So some symptoms, which some people don't have any symptoms, which is frightening, because you could be walking around with years with diabetes, and you have those complications destroying the nerve endings. Some people are tired, the thirst. We had a lady, and she took our class in December. She was diagnosed in September of 2023. She had an A1C of 19 when she was diagnosed. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And she said that she was drinking the 16-ounce bottles of water. She was drinking like 12 to 15 of them a day. She knew something was wrong. But that was probably going on for years and years and years. And after our class and intervention and everything, so her last A1C at the end of the year, beginning of the year, was 7. So she made tremendous progress, and hopefully she's well on her way to having a good quality of life.
How did she get from 19 to 7?
For lifestyle changes and medication. The doctor put her on 2 types of medication, and she really, really made changes. So with her diet and exercise, and nothing crazy with the activity. Walking is great. But that's how she did it. Yep. Blurred vision. Last year we had a young lady in her 40s. She was having blurred vision, and the eye doctor picked it up and said, you better go get an A1C checked and follow up with your primary. And type 2 diabetes she had. So more and more people, we had an ear doctor go through our diabetes class, and I didn't know this either, but she could tell by the nerves in the ear, same thing. She would see that there's a nerve damage in there, and she would say, go get your A1C tested, see where you are, and follow up, and type 2 diabetic. So like more and more dentists, so more and more professionals could pick it up. Yeah, weight loss, not absorbing, slow healing, sexual concerns, And then the big one, numbness or tingling of the hands and feet. A lot of that neuropathy, which, remember, we had 2 gentlemen go through our class, and I just felt so bad for them. They were in so much pain, they couldn't even put their hand down. I mean, it's just the neuropathy on the nerves were destroyed in their hands and their feet. Yeah. Okay, so this latent autoimmune diabetes, usually this is the type 1.5 diabetes. We don't see this too often. Usually it's diagnosed between 30 and 50. You might have a type 2 diabetic who is diagnosed. The pancreas is still working, producing insulin, but after about 6 months, it just will stop. So what we would say if there's a newly diagnosed diabetic, to have the doctor test for these autoantibodies. And there's some autoantibodies that they would test for and that they would determine that. Because eventually the pancreas is gonna stop producing insulin. So, okay, so gestational diabetes. So usually occurs during pregnancy, approximately 28 weeks, but they are testing earlier now, which is good. They want to pick it up for the health of the mom, for the health of the baby. And we know that there's an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, and like I said, about 50% of those will develop type 2 diabetes. And risk of gestational diabetes during a previous pregnancy. If you had a baby that weighed 9 pounds or more, the big baby puts you at risk. The weight, if you're above 25, and a family history of type 2 diabetes, polycystic ovary syndrome's a risk, and ethnic and race plays a part in it as well. Okay, we're going to go into the ABCs of managing diabetes, but any questions? Yes. No, don't be sorry, please. That's okay.
You were talking before about the pancreas.
Yes.
You have pancreatitis.
Yes.
Is that from?
No, that wouldn't be from.
What is that from?
So pancreatitis is inflammation of the pancreas. So it could be many different things. But sometimes we will see that in diabetics, because one of the common things with diabetics is an elevated triglyceride, which is fat in your blood. And the doctor usually checks that with your cholesterol levels. And if your triglyceride level gets over 500, you're at risk for pancreatitis. And then usually the treatment for it is they might put you on like a 40-gram low-fat diet. Yeah, so it wouldn't be really related to diabetes, but more to the fat intake. Yeah. Any other questions? Where are we going? Guys okay? Okay, so the ABCs, what are the ABCs of managing diabetes? So here's our A1C level, okay? And our red blood cells, about every 90 to 100 days, we make new red blood cells. Yes?
Can you just explain
A1C,
what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. In the A1C level, so what they do is when they check this, say every 3 to 4 months, it tells us how your blood sugars have been over 3 months. And then what we could do is we could take that A1C number and it will tell us what your average daily blood sugar is. So, because if you take it some people will take it in the morning and it's good. It might be like 90, 95. So we want the A1C tells us over 3 months how you've been. So no cheating. No. But it gives us a 3-month picture. And sugar loves our red blood cells. So on the left there, it just shows like a normal A1C, and then on the right, a high A1C. And you can see like in our bloodstream, so imagine that, you have all the sugar in there, right? It's sticky, the blood's trying to flow, so it'll stick to our arterial walls, and that could lead to plaque and a blockage. Okay. So the A1C, what do they mean? Okay, so the normal A1C level is 5.6 and below. Okay, so non-diabetics, no diabetes. Pre-diabetes is 5.7 to 6.4, and then diabetes is 6.5 or above. And like we said before, that there's no gray area. If it's 6.5 or older, you're in that range. And then the recommendations, and my boss Meg and I we follow all the way to the right here. We follow the Diabetes Association guidelines. The endocrinologists are a little bit more strict. But what we do is, so fasting before a meal, for non-diabetics, when you go to the lab, you'll see that 70 to 99 is normal. 2 hours after a meal for non-diabetics, less than 140, before bed 120, and then the A1C of 5.6. And then the endocrinologist, for diabetics, less than 110 fasting, less than 140 2 hours after a meal, before bed 110 to 150, and they like the A1C 6.5 or below. And then we stick to the Diabetes Association. So fasting, we'd like to see 80 to 130, 2 hours after a meal, up to less than 180. Bedtime, say 90 to 120, but I think we'd like to see that a little bit higher, just because of hypoglycemia during the night. And then the A1C, we shoot for less than 7%. Okay. Any questions on that, or okay? Okay. Okay, so B is for blood pressure, right? We know that the pressure as the heart is pumping and the pressure of blood against our arterial walls. And that's important as well, because like we talked about before, if you have all that sugar in there, you have a high sugar, it's sticky. Things are sticking to the arterial walls, and you get fat that sticks there because the sugar helps it, and that's where we could get a blockage. Okay. And we know that it could cause significant cardiovascular concerns and neurological, so stroke, heart attack, damage to our kidneys and our eyes. And it's actually, so we know that diabetics are 4 times as likely to have a cardiac event as opposed to a non-diabetic. And again, the blood pressure, the arterial walls being blocked with plaque. And now the hypertension is defined if your top number, your systolic, is above 130 and the diastolic is 80. So even doctors now, because you might see, oh, like 126 over 84, and now the doctors are even recommending to go on medication for those numbers, because they know how important it is, especially for diabetics. Okay, so cholesterol. Okay, so there are 2 types, right? So we got our LDL, our lousy cholesterol, and our HDL, our helpful or our good cholesterol. And then this picture just shows the HDL. So it's the brown thing's taking away the yellow. So the HDLs will help get the cholesterol out of our system. And we know when we have high LDLs, that could cause a cardiac event. And all those, when you get your lipids done, your cholesterol, triglyceride, HDL, LDL, they're all important. Don't get me wrong, all of them are very important, but that LDL is probably the most important that they're gonna look at. And then the HDL, the good cholesterol, so that helps take it out of the body. And the levels that we look for are total cholesterol, I like to see below 200, the triglycerides below 150, LDLs below 100, but if there's cardiac concerns, the doctor will want those LDLs even lower, below 70, and then the HDLs above 40. And how they get the total cholesterol, they'll add up the HDLs, the LDLs, and then 20% of your triglyceride number, and that's how they get the total cholesterol. Okay, any questions on that? Yes?
And then all of a sudden, your blood test comes back and it says you're on the high side.
Yeah.
Is it mainly sugar, eating more sugar that can cause that?
Well, with cholesterol, it could be, with the cholesterol, it would be fat, like saturated fat, but also genetics play a big role. So we always say that if it was one test, I would probably get it done in 3 months. If it was good all along, I would see what that second test showed. I wouldn't be so concerned unless it was really elevated. But that's usually due to genetics or saturated fat like red meat, whole milk, a lot of snacks with like palm oil in it. The triglycerides are related to sugar though. So that's why we'll see them elevated in diabetics. So with the triglycerides, We store them as energy, and then the body likes to store them as energy because if the cells aren't using that sugar or glucose, then we'll have the reserves and the triglycerides to release for energy, but we will. So the triglycerides are mostly sugar, alcohol, and some saturated fat. And the cholesterol is genetics and saturated fat. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, any other questions? Okay, all right, okay. Okay. So, so to learn to live with diabetes. So we'll just go over a few things and then we'll go into fats, okay? So when we teach, we use those 7 standards to manage diabetes. So when we teach the diabetics, and it's individual, but we start at recommending 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per meal. And sometimes that could be too much for people, like counting things and everything. So what we try and do is just try and make things easy. So this is, if you guys could see it, a diabetes plate. It's the plate method. So what we try and do is fill half the plate with veggies, and then the other half the starch, a quarter starch and a quarter protein, just for balance. Okay, so filling half the plate with fruits and veggies, eating more whole grains, reducing sugar intake, cakes, pies, and candies. Reduce or eliminate sweetened beverages like the juice or sports drinks, okay? Fried foods, and then reduce alcohol intake. And then talk to a registered dietitian, because it could get overwhelming with eat this many grams, and it is individualized. We have some that need 60 grams, they're very active, they're lean, and then sometimes we'll recommend 30 grams for someone just to help with weight loss. So it's individualized, but we usually start at 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per meal, and then 15 to 30 grams of carbohydrates per snack. So just a good starting point. Okay. Does everybody read food labels? Yeah, okay, good. That's good to hear, because they could be confusing. So I just wanted to point out here the serving size up top there, if you can see it, is 2/3 cup, and the total carbohydrate is 37 grams. And that's what we teach in our diabetes class. We just look at the total at first. Just look at the total carbohydrates, because we want our participants to get a feel for the serving size in the grams of carbohydrate. Because then you can see under carbohydrate we have fiber, we have added sugars. So they're all important, but we just want to start with the total carbohydrates based on the serving size. Okay. Okay, any questions about that? Yes?
The total sugar, should they be at a certain level? Should they be like below 12?
Well, the total carbohydrates, if we would shoot in there, would be like, just say the starting point would be about 45 grams. But when the added sugars are very, good question, is very important. So the added sugars, taking a look at them, and they recommend, I think it's high, they recommend no more than 50 grams of added sugar per day. We're like more on like 25, 30 grams is, I think, better off. And I think the American Heart Association agrees with that. Yeah. Because then you could get into, you guys hear of net carbs and all that. So they'll take the total carbohydrates and you subtract the fiber from that, and that would be your net carbs. But we look for for our diabetic participants, we want to focus in on, at first, those total carbohydrates. Yep. Okay, and then being active. And we know, of course, before anything, you should always make sure that your doctor or doctors are on board with you exercising. And then we shoot for that 150 minutes per week. And in our diabetes prevention program, the big 3 that we focus on are trying to get 150 minutes of moderate activity per week. If you have to, some people go through our class don't have to, but losing 5 to 7% of your body weight over 6 months and lowering your A1C by 0.2%. So if you had an A1C of 6, trying to get that down to 5.8. And depending on your age, but doing those 3 things could prevent or delay type 2 diabetes by 58 to 70%. So that's one of the big three. So we know that physical activity, and I know there was an exercise class going on before, so that was great. But it's very important for us. And being active could help prevent diabetic complications, and of course it's good for our heart. This is a big one, taking medication. All right, keep a list of your current medications. Make sure you fill your prescription. Take them as the doctor would like you. Because we do have some that don't take their medication, and we just see the kidney function's a mess. Their blood sugars throughout the day could be very high. So it's important. And if you're concerned or if you're having side effects, don't be afraid to talk to your doctor about it and see if there's anything else that you could try. But hopefully you're comfortable with your doctor or doctors to have an open dialogue. Like in class 2, for our diabetes class, we go over all medications. So we want to make sure people are aware that there's so many different things because it's important, because they're helpful. We talk about if you're checking your blood sugars or giving insulin shots, safety disposal. And just like we said, share your medication beliefs with your doctor. Make sure you're comfortable. You guys are on the same page. And then monitoring, one of the self-care behaviors is just take an inventory. Okay, see, make sure that you're meeting your treatment goals, you're healthy, if anything has to change. So take inventory. And then reducing risks. So I always say make sure you schedule regular medical checkups. And these include, too, making sure that you see the dentist, the podiatrist, the eye doctor. All these are very important. Getting the appropriate blood work done, usually every 3 to 4 months. Take care of your feet. That's a big one. Okay. And I believe like most of our participants that go through have Medicare, and they tell us that you could go to the foot doctor every 9 weeks. They'll cut the nails and they'll check the pressure on the feet, which is good. They should be doing that, making sure they're in good shape. Hopefully don't smoke. And then monitor your food, medications, exams. Okay. All right. And then learn the signs of hypoglycemia. They're usually if you're shaky, confused, okay, not feeling right. That's really important. Understanding the connection between heart disease and diabetes. And the one in there too, we talk about your feelings. You know, that's a big part of our class as well. In one of our class, whether it's with family or friends or a doctor or a professional. Okay. And some things to help try and channel stress are to meditate. Okay, take a walk. Take a break and speak to someone. Okay, and we too know whatever it may be. Spirituality is a big one. Did you guys ever hear of the Blue Zones? It was a show on Netflix, and there's an author, and there's something there to it, to people who, spirituality, religion, that there's something there as far as it's just one variable, not the whole thing, but it's important. And then in our diabetes class, what we do, because it can be very overwhelming, it's a 4-week class, an hour and a half each, is problem solving. We just ask for our participants to focus and work on one thing. Some of them could be channeling stress. One could be eating healthy meals 5 out of 7 days or adding a vegetable. Because if you try and throw everything against the wall, it's just too much. It's stressful, it's overwhelming. So when we work on that problem solving, we just try and identify just one thing to work on. Or walking, 2 days a week, whatever it may be. Just, the longest journey always starts with the first step, so. Okay, yep. Okay. And find solutions. So when we problem solve, we help walk them through it, and they develop their own plan. Come up with it. What are you going to do? Something you want to work on. We'll give them a solution. We'll come up with it together. And if anything's changed, are there any new tools, resources, or medications out there for you? And if you need any further referrals or information to come up with. Okay. And then take action. Which possible solutions do I want to try? Do I need help to make it work? Okay, so that's just the 7 self-care. So that's what we focus on our diabetes class, helping people. And then the last thing, guys, we're going to talk about are just fats. Does anybody want to tell why fats are important in our diet? Anybody have a... Well, they protect our organs, right? Yes, they provide energy. And they help absorb fat-soluble vitamins, right? Vitamin A, D, E, and K. And there are different types of fats, right? You guys probably are all aware of this. Okay. Okay, so we have our monounsaturated fats. All right, these are the healthiest fats, so we know that they could raise the good cholesterol. Okay. They could raise the good cholesterol. Okay, so they're mostly plant-based, liquid at room temperature, and they help reduce the risk of heart disease because they could help lower the overall cholesterol and raise the HDL. And just some good sources are avocados. Okay, very good. Nut butters, nuts, oils such as canola, olive, and peanut. And olives, green, black, and pitted olives. Okay. All right, and then we have our polyunsaturated fats that have omega-3 fatty acids. I'm sure you guys all heard of omega-3s. So they could help lower our triglycerides. Okay, so another important aspect for cardiovascular health, and they're found in fatty fish. And usually try and recommend about 2 servings per week. And some sources are albacore tuna, herring, lake trout, mackerel, salmon, and sardines if you're into them. Okay. Okay. All right, and then just more with the polyunsaturated fats, liquid at room temperature, are mostly plant-based and certain fish, and they could help reduce the bad cholesterol and the risk of heart disease. And so pine nuts, walnuts, corn, soybeans, sunflower, flaxseed, pumpkin, and sesame seeds, salmon, and mackerel. Okay. And the omega-6 fatty acids, they're good for our triglycerides, plant-based except for coconut and palm oil. So coconut oil gets a lot of attention, but it does have a lot of saturated fat in that, so you want to use that with moderation. And then palm oil we would find in a lot of snacks like Entenmann's and things like that, but it's high in saturated fat. And then the sources of the omega-6 are the pine nuts, walnuts, corn, soybeans, sunflower, and then the seeds. Mayonnaise, they do have the olive oil mayonnaise, and salad dressings. Okay. Okay. And then the saturated fats, right? These are the ones that could raise our overall cholesterol and our LDL, the lousy cholesterol. And they're solid at room temperature, and they're mostly in animal products, okay, that we see. And they raise the LDLs and increase our risk of cardiovascular disease. And then here's all the good sources of them. So bacon, butter, cream cheese, sour cream, half and half, whipped cream, and then there's the oils with coconut, palm, and palm kernel. Okay. And how about, let's see here. Did you guys ever hear of trans fats? Okay. So they're exceptionally bad for our heart. And what they do is they do a hydrogenation process. So what they do is to extend the shelf life so that those products will be around forever. Okay. And they could really raise our LDL and our overall cholesterol. Okay, guys, and just a couple more things. And just some tips for cutting fat and cholesterol are when baking, you could use 2 egg whites. Eggs are they're a healthy food. They're mostly mono and polyunsaturated fat. I do know they have cholesterol in them, but they do have a lot of vitamins and minerals. Eggs. Yeah.
What if you just eat the white of it?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So the egg white is good. You'll get all the protein in there. Yep. And it's good to mix it up if you do enjoy the yolk, like the 2 egg whites and a whole egg. Yep. Choose fat-free dressings, cream cheese, fat-free or low-fat dairy. Try lemon juice, or they have really good flavored vinegars now. They have like fig flavors and balsamic, all different types. So very good flavors. Yes, it's very good, right? It's pretty healthy. Use herbs and spices to season vegetables instead of butter or oil. Okay. Chill soups and then remove the broth. So you take all the fat out, and this is an old Weight Watchers trick, like dip your fork in dressings or gravy instead of pouring it all on, say, the salad. So you just save you a little bit there. Okay, so just in conclusion, guys, so just as important to be followed by your doctor. Make sure you're comfortable. You're going for your routine checkups. You're getting your blood work done. Your urinalysis should be done. And make sure, yep, you're going for that. Ask for help and guidance when needed. And try and live a balanced life, right? We're all trying to do. So, yes. Okay. Okay. And thank you for your time and attention. And thank you for your patience. I know. So, yes, sure, of course.
A lot of people take metformin, but
Yes.
they're also advertising other things on TV like Jardians.
Yes.
So what's
Metformin.
I don't want to take metformin yet.
Yeah.
We're doing strictly diet.
Okay, so lifestyle.
I
Yeah.
want to go on metformin. What
Yeah.
I read about metformin, I don't like what I read.
Yeah.
But I don't know how the others compare to that.
Well, metformin is usually the first medication they'll use for type 2 diabetes, but we're even seeing pre-diabetics go on it. So, and it's, unless you have really bad kidney function, it's a very safe drug. And what it does is it helps prevent the liver from kicking out sugar continuously. So that's what it does. Metformin does, yeah. So it helps the liver behave. But it is, if you have any concerns with your kidneys, then you wouldn't want to be on it. But if your kidneys are healthy, and that's usually the first line of defense that they go to. And Jardiance is for diabetics that have kidney concerns.
But they have Novia,
Yes.
you have all these others that
Yeah, so Ozempic's a big one, Wegovy, Mounjaro. So they're what they call their GLP-1s. So what they do, they're good for our heart. They also help us feel full, because with type 2 diabetics, we're missing that hormone that makes us feel full. So you tend to overeat. So what those GLP-1s do is it helps make you feel full. And you can see people who are on them, they lose quite a bit of weight loss. But you still have to, the lifestyle, they're losing weight, but it's no, the Mounjaro, Wegovy, yeah. Metformin, yeah, not so much, but more of those ones. Yeah, but the problem is, as of now, they have to be on them for life, because they have done some studies with Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Ozempic, and when they come off it, they tend to put the weight back on. Yeah, so that's yeah. But metformin's been around a long time, and unless there's kidneys, it's a safe drug. Yes, ma'am?
What's considered borderline diabetic?
So borderline would be that if that A1C level would be 5.7 to 6.4, okay? And then if they did like a fasting blood glucose, it would be like 101 to 125. But the A1C will tell you, that's really the gold standard. So an A1C of 5.7 to 6.4.
No, but what I really want to know, by
Yeah.
saying borderline, you're not going into pre-diabetic, right?
Yeah, so the pre-diabetic numbers are that 5.7 to 6.4, and that comes from the American Diabetes Association. Yeah, so it's a pretty big range. Yeah. Oh, yes, yes. So it's what they do is they test it for cardiovascular health. Yes.
What is your cholesterol number show that's in your system?
Fat as well, but that could be related to diet, but genetics play a big part of it too. Like we always say, some people could eat eggs every day, have a great cholesterol, and some people look at the back of an egg carton and they have high cholesterol. Yeah, so the cholesterol level, usually saturated fat. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I recently was told that if you're diabetic, you have a higher propensity to become anemic after a certain point. What would cause that?
For anemia, we haven't.
With the blood?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly, because we haven't really seen that in our, and we have a little practice in our class for anemia. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. It's blood, so it's usually like if somebody is lacking iron in their diet, we'll see hemoglobin. And there's all different types. There's thalassemia, there's all different other things that could cause a low hemoglobin level. But the direct link to diabetes, I'm not sure. Yeah, yes.
So where are the classes? When do they start? And, you said it's a 6-week course.
Yeah, it's 4 weeks. So it all depends. We usually try and run them once a month or so. So it all depends. And we only need 2 people to do a class. It depends what works for you guys. So we try and pick a day and a time that works.
And where do you go? I mean,
Yeah, we usually do them at the health department, but we've done them all over. We've done them in Lakewood at senior centers, all the way down to Little Egg at the community center. So like a place like this, if we just had 2 people and we were allowed, we could come out here and do a class. So we're mobile, which is nice.
is there a schedule for that?
So it depends. Yeah, so there's nothing in concrete. So once we get the interest, then we figure out the day and the time. So it just depends what works for the people.
Oh, a day.
Yeah.
And who would they contact for that?
I could give you my card. Yep, I have them somewhere. I'll get them for you though. Yes. Yep.
What we can do also is see who is interested, so that, like, we can have a class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you guys are interested in that, we'll check and see what we can do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last thing too, we do, I didn't mention before, I don't believe, we do a Live Healthy program where we come out with our registered nurse and she checks blood pressure, cholesterol, and glucose. We do that all over the county for like 2 hours, and we do the health screenings.
Oh, that would be good.
Yep. So we do that as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're very welcome.